Um, so good morning, first of all, to everyone, whoever has joined us already, and thank you for joining this session. Brief introduction of myself. I am Padma Priya. I am the editor-in-chief and co-founder of Suno India. We are a podcast platform for underreported issues. I'm also a long COVID survivor myself, and I founded a Telegram group for survivors in India and those facing post-COVID complications. And one of the common things that came out once I started this group was that a lot of people were facing severe anxiety, also panic attacks during the recovery phase. And the idea for this discussion actually came out of those, for this session actually came out of those discussions. I would like to now briefly introduce our panelist, Dr. Kaustubh, who is a psychiatrist by training, and he's a practicing psychiatrist in Pune since the last 15 years. He has a special interest in common mental health issues like depression and anxiety. He also has interest in community mental health research, ethics in research, and rights-oriented clinical practice. He works as a senior research fellow at Center for Mental Health, Law and Policy, Indian Law Society, Pune. He co-leads a large community-based mental health intervention called Atmiyata. He's also completed the International Diploma in Mental Health, Human Rights and Law at Indian Law Society, Pune. So thank you very much and welcome, Dr. Kaustubh. Would you like to sort of start off by maybe telling us a bit about what is depression and what is anxiety and what is the difference between the two, or maybe the commonalities also?
Thank you, Priya. First of all, I think thank you for inviting me and basically having part of this. I think to start with, depression and anxiety, I think these are common terms which are used. Many a times people referring to mental issues or mental conditions, health conditions, also refer them directly as a depression and anxiety. And that's why I think it's important to understand the difference. And the difference is important because I think the course of maybe the treatment or a therapy varies with both these conditions, and plus the kind of a self-care which you have to take also varies. But basic difference between these two, though they are both basically what we call them as a common mental health disorders, by that I mean that they are very frequently occurring. They are very common and they can basically happen with anyone around us. So nobody is like immune to depression and anxiety, to be specific. Depression at its core basically has classically have three set of important issues or symptoms, which is basically low or sad mood. So your emotions or your mood is low and sad. The second important point is having a lack of energy or fatigue and lack of interest. These are the second, when I say lack, is the reduced energy interest rather than lack. And the third point is, thought process, which is very typically in depression. There is what we call as a triad of thoughts, which is helplessness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. So these are the three, like what you can say, the characteristic of depression in that sense. On the other side, anxiety is basically all about more of a worry or more of a what you can say, the worrisome thoughts about everything. Basically, it can be about anything, about your own self, future, your health, different situations, social situations, performance related, and so on and so forth. So anxiety is basically the cornerstone of anxiety is a worrisome thoughts or negative thoughts in a common term. Again, I don't like negative, positive, but that is how it's been referred. And the second important point in anxiety is that, and that is how I think, as you said, we are going to talk today about, maybe more we will talk about anxiety today, because anxiety does affect your physical health also in different means. When I say it affects your physical health, when you have anxiety, you can have some physical symptoms, and in the longer run also, anxiety has been known to have an impact on your physical health. Typically the lifestyle issues like hypertension, heart disease, and diabetes, and so on. So that's why anxiety is something which is I believe I mean, that's the difference, or that's the cornerstone. Another just difference I wanted to say, and then maybe I'll stop. From the course perspective, commonly depression appears, or people go through depression in a very episodic manner. That means depression comes as episodes and goes, while many a times anxiety can stay for a long period, and that's why I think. In a very medical language, we say depression. From a disease perspective, depression is more severe than anxiety, but if you say from a duration perspective, then anxiety can stay more longer and can have a kind of a regular kind of a track in your brain than depression, which may come and go as an episode. So that's another important point to remember. But these are the few, I think, points which are important to understand when we talk about depression and anxiety.
Just a follow-up question to that. Is it possible for people to have both depression and anxiety at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. Means, again, I always hate diagnosis. Frankly, I don't like diagnosis because that's a different issue about stigma and how diagnosis labels people, and how we know what happens after labeling. That's a separate issue. But from a diagnosis perspective, so from this question, I think it's a good question, because understand that all these are groups of, or all these terms of diagnosis are more for a clinical terminologies, or more for professionals to be specific. Obviously, for people, they need to understand what I am having. That's important. But the more importance of diagnosis is from a treatment and a therapy perspective. That's one point I wanted to make. Second, to answer your question directly, absolutely, means depression and anxiety always, or most of the times, goes hand in hand. So that means people who have a depression can have anxiety, and vice versa. And again, it's the intensity may vary. Sometimes some people have a high levels of depression and low anxiety, and sometimes people have a kind of high levels of anxiety, and maybe a depression is secondary. So it can vary, but commonly I will say both coexist, and both basically then becomes stress to each other in other language. So because depression makes you inactive, and that inactivity can lead to more anxiety, and anxiety similarly can reduce your confidence, and then that can lead to depression. So one of the example. So that's how I will say kind of anxiety and depression coexist.
Talking about the post-COVID phase, like I said, we had set up this I had set up this India COVID survivors group, and I just want to briefly tell why I started this. So I got COVID last April, and this was during the time when there was hardly, any proper sort of, tests were difficult to find. We were in the middle of a national lockdown. And post that, I actually got severe post-COVID complications. But one of the things that I experienced during that 21-day, 24-day isolation by myself in the house was severe anxiety. I did not like the isolation. I'm a very social person by nature. I think all of us are, but and I just could not cope. And one of the things that I noticed was that I become very anxious. And a few months later, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and apart from the whole post-COVID complications. And just to sort of shorten a very long story, it took like 9 months for the doctors to basically find out what is happening within my body physically. And in fact, I was told repeatedly that this is only anxiety, this is nothing else, when actually there were also actual physical changes manifesting in my brain because of the post-COVID complications. So I sort of realized that there was a mixture of this patients, one being told, being invalidated, experiences being invalidated by doctors saying that this is nothing, you just have anxiety, but also just telling a patient it's just anxiety and not helping them out, I feel sort of left me, literally in the ocean trying to swim by myself. And only after I found a good doctor who figured out what was happening, and could I get the help that I required. And that's because I have the access and I could sort of fight for myself and advocate for myself, honestly. In all honesty, I'm very aware of those privileges too. And so then I decided it's one, good to sort of share my experience, and to start a support survivors group, because this seemed to be like a very recurring experience for many people, where people are saying that, oh, we are being told to lose weight. Oh, we are just being told it's anxiety. So just talking about that, because you also mentioned about how anxiety manifests itself in physical forms. Could you sort of talk about this? Like, have you seen that there's an increase in the incidence of these mental health issues? And also, what are some of the factors that lead to these things?
So maybe I'll just reframe your question. Basically, maybe we should discuss the post COVID complication and post COVID as anxiety, basically.
Sure.
Then I think
Sure.
that's
Sure.
how I will try to pitch it, because there are other post COVID issues also. So there is a depression also, there is a sleep issues what we are seeing, but we may discuss it next as a next question. The commonest form or commonest now issues, mental health issues, what we are, as you said already, that what we are seeing as a professionals also is anxiety, basically. Largely, again, multifactorial, and the list is not exhaustive what I'm saying, but as you said, obviously the first thing is about quarantine when you get COVID. Before getting COVID, obviously there is anxiety that whether I will get COVID, and then whether my family will get COVID, and my parents who are old will get COVID. So that anxiety always prevails, and it's still there. Third, obviously, anxiety is around, basically lockdown, impacts of lockdown, and lack of maybe lack of I will say the lack of health system capacity, basically, to accommodate all people, and that's typically when we have seen, particularly in last April and May, when there was a second wave, and the way it exhausted our health system, and that again creates a lot of anxiety for people still, that whether if I get COVID, I will get proper help. Then obviously quarantine, post quarantine, as you said, long COVID, the way COVID then unfolds, it doesn't leave your body. Even if you are out of quarantine, and even you are out of core physical symptoms of COVID, it's still there are there is a data which says that it either direct impact on your brain, as you are saying, or there can be indirect effects of COVID, like fatigue, lack of overall energy, and overall the kind of for many people with long COVID, particularly, what I have also observed, or I have seen, at least in my experience, there are 2-3 months of almost duration, which they continue to have a restricted lifestyle, which definitely impacts their confidence. So all these factors, I will say, lead to anxiety. Anxiety, at the outset, both depression and anxiety, we know, have some amount of physical health issues, or a physical impact, or impact on your physiology and physical health. Anxiety is more because anxiety technically has a continuous impact on your physical health. What does that I mean? So whenever you have a very high levels of anxiety, again, I'm not talking a very mild levels of anxiety, which is a day-to-day anxiety of running around, but when you have something which is little longer, little, something which you continue to think, continue to get indulged into for a little longer period, maybe 3-4 weeks continuously, you are preoccupied with something, then that kind of anxiety definitely, in a very biological terms, have an impact on your physical health. It can impact your even immunity also. It impacts your digestion. It impacts your blood pressure. It can impact your overall temperature regulation, to be specific, and so on, basically. And it can lead to, obviously, reduces your pain sensitivity. That's another issue commonly known in anxiety, that your pain sensitivity reduces, so that there is a common issues like a back pain or leg pain, which gets triggered more, or even if you have a history of migraine, then there is a high potential that migraine can increase in intensity. So I think these are the direct physical effects of, I will say, the anxiety. And again, related to more or less post-COVID, what we are seeing right now. Obviously, the other common symptom I will just say about this and stop, and because it's related to, again, anxiety, is insomnia. So again, what we are seeing is many people who are coming forward. Again, multiple factors, as I already said, directly related to COVID or indirectly related to COVID. But there are a lot of issues with sleep regulation and having proper sleep. and that obviously eventually, if you don't have a good sleep for a few days, that's fine, but if you don't have a good sleep for now few weeks, then definitely it interferes with your overall lifestyle. And again, that's why I brought out the sleep issue, because again, anxiety and not having sleep is a kind of a not a good combination to have for your physical health also. And again, there are a lot of studies from about COVID and sleep, that how a good sleep is important. Good sleep is important to for a recovery, for a full recovery from COVID, and how that proper sleep has a good impact on your immunity, and that is how it helps recovery from COVID. So that's why I think sleep is a anxiety and sleep both are important issues to be tackled. The last point I will mention is definitely I think that's it's very unfortunate. Obviously, being in a part of a medical community, the way the response of other health professional to anxiety is, I think, I feel always unfortunate. Two things. Obviously, there is a lack of training and awareness about anxiety among other medical professionals, and that's why they just brush it off, saying that it's anxiety, and basically saying that this is your weight and you take care of your weight. That kind of a thing, as you said, which is completely not a very kind of a, what I will say, uh, not a very good response, or not a very proper response to have, because what I have seen in my practice also, it doesn't help. Frankly, it just increases the what we called as the multiple doctors. You can say. Basically going to multiple doctors. What I mean by that, if somebody says you have anxiety, then people don't they don't agree, or they don't understand if there is anxiety, then what needs to be done. So then again go to another doctor and say the same thing. Another doctor also says the same thing. They go to a third doctor. I think what happened with you also, as you said, because then you don't get a solution ultimately, and then you continue to go to different doctors, which unfortunately again going to increase the burden on health system. So I believe that's why there has to be a different response, and I hope that doctors will get aware about anxiety as issue more, or at least they know whom to direct, at least if they are confirmed that if there is anxiety. Last point, one more I remember as I talk, is definitely anxiety and physical health symptoms many a times are very similar. So I think, unless and until you are 100% sure that there is no physical health symptom, you should not be jumping on anxiety. And I have seen this many a times, not now related to COVID, but I have seen this is related to thyroid issues, related to many other issues of stomach or gastric issues, many other issues like arthritis, where there is a symptoms which are mimicking anxiety, and they have been brushed off for many years. Basically, anemia is a common thing. Like anemia is missed commonly, saying it is just anxiety, and nobody investigates, or nobody believes the physical symptoms. So I think my take always is, unless and until you have 100% confidence that there is no physical health issue, then only you should term it as anxiety, and then take a proper course or action after that. That's how I will say. I'll stop.
One of the earlier points that you raised is how you dislike the whole concept of diagnosis and the stigma sort of attached to it. And one of the common things that comes up even when I'm discussing with other people who are having post-COVID complications is that, one is that they're not being believed with their symptoms, but also when they have anxiety, and when they're being told anxiety, there is some amount of resistance that is coming to actually seek help. So at what point does a patient, apart from, of course, medically ruling out all the possibilities, like you rightly pointed out, like thyroid, anemia, so on. At what point should a person take help from a professional, say like yourself, or a counselor or a psychologist? At what point should that happen?
So I think there are 4 to 5 factors which are very important, as we always say in our generally from a mental health, and there is obviously data to suggest that also. So first important point is if your biological rhythm. So basically, when I say biological rhythms, typically is a sleep and appetite. That's the common thing. So these are the 2 things which are affected a lot because of your what kind of a mental health issue or a stress what you are going through basically. So if your sleep is completely disturbed, you are, as I said, if you are not able to sleep for 2 days, then that's a different issue. But if you are not sleeping for 3 to 4 weeks, then that's something which needs to then tackle with the professional. Similarly, if you have lost appetite but you are okay, your energy levels are fine, you are working okay, you are not losing weight too much, then that's fine. But if the your lack of appetite is causing a lot of weight loss, and for example in a month's time you have lost 5 to 6 kgs and there is no physical health issue you have, as I earlier said, then definitely that's something which again goes to professionals. Very clear cut demarcation is if somebody has a severity of symptoms, like whether it's a depression, whether it's a anxiety. So in depression, severity is generally when you are completely hopeless, helpless, worthless, and maybe you are having a suicidal thoughts, then I think that requires a professional help. Similarly in anxiety, if somebody is having a lot of panic attacks, you are not able to do anything, it's what we call as the completely paralyzing anxiety, then again you need to go to a professional. uh, the fourth thing I will say, any kind of a any kind of a depression or anxiety which is from a duration perspective, if it is more than 2 months or 3 months, so you have tried your own self-care techniques, you have tried all the self-help, you may have reached out to support from friends or families, and still after 2 3 months you are not able to get out of it. So the duration wise, generally remember 3 months I will say should be the maximum deadline you should have. If in 3 months of a self-care, if you are not getting out of symptoms of depression and anxiety, it's better to take a professional opinion. Then I will say the important other point is if it is completely so again, if it is not duration wise, but if depression and anxiety symptoms are impacting your day-to-day functioning. So for sometimes what may happen is the sometimes the anxiety is so severe that in 4 weeks it suddenly impacts your day-to-day functioning so much that you can't go to office or you can't do any work from morning to evening, or you can't do any of your responsibilities, then definitely I think you should seek a help. So because there is no point in, because then it's a vicious cycle, because you are not working, it will increase your distress and anxiety and depression. So these are few indicators where I believe you should take a help. And again, I completely agree that from a diagnosis perspective, and this is again, unfortunately, a lot of people again may not be in this group, but there are a lot of people I know who, due to now Google access to internet, continue to self-diagnose themselves with different conditions, and that's not a healthy thing to do, because again, as I said very clearly, diagnosis is more for professionals and more for clinical terms to be used. So self-diagnosis is one thing I will say you should not get into. You should just see your symptoms, and then, as I said, all these criterias, and then decide whether to go ahead with for any professional. So that's how I put it.
You spoke about self-care. Now, what are some of the things that one can do to deal with anxiety and depression in this post-COVID, or ongoing COVID phase that we are currently in? So what are some of the tips that, somebody can do at home? Apart from, of course, if it gets very severe, then they seek professional help, but also what is it that one can do to sort of cope and help themselves?
Yeah. So sorry. So from a self-care perspective, I think there are few what I can say ground rules or a basic rules, like what we know and what we have, and that holds true for our physical health also, which are basically what you can say, which are basically around your daily schedule. So again, in anxiety, it is very important how much you can able to carry your daily schedule. So when I say daily schedule or a daily activity schedule, that means starting from your getting up time in the morning, and then what you are doing throughout the day, whether you have scheduled activities throughout the day, you have fixed timings, not fixed, but at least regular timings for your meals, and then your sleeping time. So something which is what we known as a scheduled activity or daily activity schedule, as we call. So unless and until you have this, and I understand that people who go through anxiety, many a times their daily activity schedule get disturbed. So as a self-care, what you should be doing, I think, and typically in first or second week of anxiety, when anxiety is not that maybe, at a moderate intensity, it is a minimal or mild, you should try to get back to your daily activity schedule as early as possible. I will say particularly for people, like young people, because sometimes with a, kind of older people or middle-aged people who have a job, maybe that kind of a that naturally they get into a daily activity schedule because they have a job, it forces them. But for younger people who, may not have a routine, and particularly in COVID times, what we are seeing with the online education happening, there is no strict schedule they young people have, and there is a high possibility that your daily activity schedule goes for a toss. You don't sleep at night, you sleep in a daytime, you don't, interact with anyone, you don't do any productive work, and that has a, I think, from a self-care perspective, I will say this has a huge impact, a negative impact on your anxiety. The second point I will say, definitely, for getting anxiety, there are reasons. May you get anxiety because you are thinking, or you are, getting triggered by something. And it is important, I think, as a self care, or as a as a every person to reflect and to understand what are these triggers. And then basically either, it's typically like we do for our physical health, try to resolve these triggers by your own, or try to address these triggers by your own, or either seek a help, immediately. If you seek a help either from your partner, friends, family members, or anybody, whom you trust, if you seek help and try to get out of these triggers, I think that's a very important, I will say, a good self-care technique you can, immediately have and reduce your anxiety, or actually get out of your anxiety. The third, I will say, which is a common sense, is about exercise, or either a physical or some form of relaxation exercise, which we know that has a direct impact on your anxiety or distress. So again, getting involved into a regular physical exercise, or having regular relaxation exercise, commonly people term it as a meditation, a very famous term, but again, meditation is nothing but relaxation exercise. So any form of exercise, again, many people ask me that whether only meditation will help. So again, I say no, it's not the case. Basically, any form of physical exercise, and particularly many a times, I think people may have experienced that when you are having moderate levels of anxiety, it is difficult to do meditation or relaxation exercise because you can't focus basically. So then a physical exercise is always a better way. Whatever physical exercise, starting from home-based exercise, a walk, jogging, or you go to gym, or you go to some sports, whatever you like. Basically, I think a physical exercise, I will say, in self-care should be there. One of the greatest tool what you can have in your armory is a physical exercise, which can be again, I understand there is a issues about consistency with physical exercise, but as much as you can, I think it will be always going to help you for your mental health also. That's how I will say. And the fifth, I will say, in a self-care, always, I think it's important that, as we say, some amount of preparedness, as we always feel. Again, I understand that access to mental health professionals is a big issue, and largely access is more in urban than in rural India. But at least if people who are from urban India, at least they can have some amount of preparedness. When I say preparedness, means they should know whom to approach. What has happened over a period of time is we have our family doctor whom we approach for our physical health issues, but again, we don't know whom to approach for our mental health needs, and that becomes a problem. So I have seen many people, when they reach out to me, they say, yeah, we are trying to reach out to someone for last month or 2 months, and this I am saying in the city of Pune, with a 200 odd psychiatrists and 500 odd counselors. That's the situation in city of Pune. Then you can imagine what must be happening in remote areas or in the rural areas. So point I'm making, in your self-care, I think it is important that you should have a preparedness. That means you should have contact of professionals, at least. Even if you don't need them, that's a different issue, but at least you should know whom to approach if you reach at that stage. So I will say these are 5 points in self-care which are important, and it's important that people do apply that. Another point, obviously, obviously it's not a point, but being aware about your mental health, actually, that maybe I have missed, because many a times people are very much aware about their physical health issues, but what I have seen that people don't consider mental health as an issue or mental health as a health condition, and they just ignore their mental health symptoms. I think that's another though it's not a self-care technique, but I will say it may be the pre-self-care technique. Before self-care, what starts is you are aware about your mental health, and then only the self-care makes sense, because if you are not aware, then there is no self-care, basically. That's how I put it.
One last question before I start taking questions from the audience. One of the common symptoms that a lot of patients who got COVID and are recovering are experiencing is something called as brain fog. Now, how do you differentiate between brain fog and the lack of focus that also comes with anxiety? I think, or are they similar, or what's the difference from your point of view?
No, there is a difference. When you say lack of concentration can be, due to different issues. Like, as you said already, anxiety, and if you have a lot of worry and a lot of thoughts in your mind, you can't focus in something. And second, anxiety, the lack of concentration can be because of depression, can be because you are not sleeping well, maybe because your energies are less, you are fatigued because of COVID again. So lack of concentration can be because of various issues. Brain fog, I think, is a kind of a different condition completely. When I say different condition, as in it's a proper different mental health issues, where it can be experienced again post COVID. It's a common thing what we are noticing also earlier also. Again, it's related to high levels of anxiety, brain fog commonly, than depression. And when I say brain fog, it's I think the experience with people always share is there is something which is like they either blank, they feel, so why again the term, it's self-explanatory, it's a fog basically. So you feel like there is nothing you can think about, or you can, don't have anything in your head, basically. It's like completely blank, or you can't do anything. And obviously, if in that condition you can't focus, or you can't have attention to something. So definitely these both are different conditions, I think. And typically, how do you differentiate? Brain fog is something which many a times, though it's both are episodic, but brain fog is something which may stay a little longer in the daytime. It can occupy slowly many hours of your day. And you can't get over brain fog. Many a times what happens, brain fog stays with you for a little longer. You can't just immediately get off. Many a times when you have a lack of attention or concentration due to anxiety, you are still aware, basically. Yeah, you are not able to focus, and you can kind of shake yourself up and say, now let's focus on this task, basically. So that's the difference, I will say. Again, clinically, I don't want to say, but clinically, brain fog can be kind of a dissociation, as we always feel, or maybe it can be something related to depersonalization and realization. These are the clinical terms again for a brain fog. Basically, brain fog is a more or less a lay person's term.
Thank you. Yeah. What's helped me when I experience this kind of anxiety where I'm unable to focus has been coloring. So I basically now taught myself how to color and draw pictures, and I find that more meditative than meditation itself. So.
Absolutely, 100%, and that's why sorry, but that's why I'll say ki, this fad or this influence about meditation, I think should go. Means I don't think meditation means that you sit down at one place and start having those techniques taught by different people, and we know there are different cults who do meditation. I think meditation is something, anything basically. Your exercise can be your physical exercise can be your meditation. As you said, coloring can be meditation, gardening can be meditation, cooking can be meditation, your work can be meditation. So meditation is everything, basically. The principle of relaxation is when you focus in an activity, and when your focus is very good, that you are actually enjoying that activity, and you are into that activity completely. I think that is where we know that scientifically, brain wise, that's the relaxation for your brain. That's how I think it reduces your anxiety.